Hello everybody! This is the last video tutorial from this project. So this is the 8th video tutorial, and in this one I'm going to like to explain you the key with the final touches. Pam pam pam! And then I'm going to explain you how to continue working on the base and give you, I think, easy tricks to have nice bases, okay? So first, what happened in that moment? When you have done the model, so your model is done like 99%, so more or less is done. So I don't have more excuses to say, nah, I think I have to continue working on that. So when you don't have that kind of excuses, it's like, hey, I like it, my model is done. This is the step, because it's not done. You have to paint the final touches like this. What kind of final touches I recommend you do at the end? Paint with inks on the leather belts or on leather, for example, to have different finish. Some matte, another one satin, and another one glossy. More or less it's like this, like you have seen. And then paint another highlight. What happened with the highlighting? You have to paint another one with pure white on the non-metallic metal. I know you love them, and I explain you about the ceiling. So what is your ceiling when you want to paint skin, for example? Something close to white because you want to represent something satin, right? But in that case, you want to represent the bright from the non-metallic metal. So if it's something like shiny, you have to represent something, I think, different than the rest of the lights. For that reason, I like use pure white. I'm going to say again, pure white. If someone told you that you don't have to use pure white, it's wrong. This is the moment to use pure white. Just 10% or 5% or maybe less. Final touches, like you can see, it's not stippling because it's not like that, but it's just paint thin or tiny dots in squares on tiny places to represent this bright. So with this bright will look much interesting than if you paint with the same highlighting than another stuff, another materials. So if you see, for example, the chain, you will see that in the places where I've painted the highlighting, I'm going to reinforce them a bit else with this highlighting. Pure white, that's right. Just pure white. So without any kind of mixes, just pure white. So you don't have excuses now to use pure white. And now you know where you have to use pure white. In really tiny places like this, and in places like 5%, maybe less. So if you see the chain or other materials or other stuff, you will see that I'm painting just, I don't know, 1%, just that. So it's something really tiny. For example, in that step, if you feel that in some places the light is too down, it's not enough. So I recommend you paint with, for example, ice yellow or color similar like that, if we are talking about gold, like in that case, to paint this kind of highlighting, but without pure white, because pure white should be just in the places where you painted the highlighting previously. But maybe now in places like, for example, that part of this kind of metallic loincloth, you play with the airbrush and you bring down or remove the highlighting that you were there. So in that kind of reasons, I recommend you paint with ice yellow or color similar with the value. And then, if you want, tiny dot with pure white. For example, that kind of knee pad or this kind of element on his knee. At the beginning, I thought that the contrast with this metallic will be great. So I was painting with mid-tones, with different kind of ochres, and was okay. But then, when I've painted with airbrush, I added another shadows, and maybe I changed some mid-tones, but I increased the shadows, so I increased the contrast. But what happened now? I feel perfectly that the contrast is enough, but doesn't taste as non-metallic metal. For that reason, I've painted with ice yellow, and then I've painted again with pure white in a tiny place. So you can watch it again to see what kind of places I've painted with this non-metallic. It's more or less play with inks and reinforce the ceiling, the highlighting with the non-metallic metal in that step. So more or less it's just that, because the rest of the model it's done. So I told you 99% less the non-metallics. So once time is done, all that kind of stuff or brights, I think your model will look awesome. So it's done. So if you are here, remember my words. Your model, it's awesome. So if you feel that you have to fix something, do it. But I recommend you that if you are here, your model is done. So you don't have to feel worried about anything. Because if you feel worried, you should back again and repaint something. But if you are here, you can see perfectly what I have to repaint. It's just some highlighting, but in a tiny place. So if you see this axe, you will see it's just there. What is that? 2% from the axe? It's just that. But these final touches are the key. So if you don't paint them, for sure your model will look awesome, but with maybe like a blurry effect. So it will be flat. Not flat because you painted with a lot of contrast, but let me explain you that if you add this, then will be more explosive. It's like, wow, what kind of light are you using? And this is just pure white. Remember, Sergio Calvo recommend paint with pure white in the models. But just 2%, just that, no more. So here you have your model. So it's done. Your model is finished. Now, what do you have to do? If you want to add some special effect, for example, add blood, for example, like I'm going to use with this sponge, I'm going to add blood to represent this, like he was killing something, I don't know. In that case, I was thinking to use like this kind of sticky blood or more thick blood than liquid, because the effect that offer me when I take the photo, it's different, and when you see on your hand, looks different. So looks really, really thick blood, but it's really interesting. For sure, maybe the blood is not like this one, but if it has piece of from the skin or muscle, stuff like that, maybe could be something like that. I tried to represent something really creepy, and I thought that will be okay. For that reason, I played in that way. So I think works perfectly, and I love it, and I recommend you that. If you want something more like different kind of blood, liquid, just dilute the painting. If you think that this it's the result that you want, just use from the color that I show you, from golden color, just dip your sponge and splash on your model. Just touch with the sponge, and this is the result. Super easy, and I think increase a lot of details. And now the base. What happens when we want to paint the base? In that case, I always recommend you paint with Tamiya thinner. It's really nice. But in that case, I would like to test the thinner from the third acrylic generation from AK, and I'm going to test. Works perfectly with their own colors. If you have Tamiya, works perfectly too. But in that case, I like it to play with this one, so I don't know if in the future I'm going to continue playing with this one or I'm going to continue playing with Tamiya. I've decided to play with that one because at least in Spain, some people told me that it's really, really hard buy a Tamiya thinner. So for that reason, I've decided to play with this one, just to test if it works or not. Because I think playing in a base, it's easier than play over a model to check if it works or not. I think so. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think if you play in a place like that, it will be easier. Because if it doesn't work, it's just remove that paint and paint another layer with Tamiya and the colors, just that. So how you have to start when you need to paint a base like that? First, remember that our model is in a cave without light, less on the top of his chest, just that. So you have to play For sure, you have to play with light, because if you play without light, then everything will be flat. I don't want to say black, because for sure if you use black, will be black. But can imagine that we are playing with gray, for example, with just a single gray, will be completely flat. So the result will look like you didn't paint. So we need to play with value of light. Not too much, but enough to represent the contrast. For sure, in that case, because we want to play with something really, really dark, for sure we'll have to play with black in some places, but just the deepest shadows, just that. Then the rest of that, you have to play with desaturated colors. What means that? If you want to add greens, blues, orange, browns, be careful with yellow. Try to add more blue inside, because we want to use cold colors in that base, and we have to use something desaturated. Blue colors will desaturate more or less all colors, less some greens. So I think it's a nice idea. Or use grays with a bit of blue inside, that I'm going to show you here too. Then, if you want to start with something more saturated, do it. My opinion is, if you start with something really, really dark, perfect, because it's our idea. Then play with something lighter and with a control between the saturation, something not too much saturated. But if you want to saturate more, I think now it's the moment, in the midtones. And then with the next ones, I recommend you desaturate again the color with grays, browns, maybe black or white. White I don't recommend you in that case, because we have to use something darker to represent that ambient. So you can change white for the ochre I show you on the wet palette. But if you feel that this ochre is too bright, you have to change or mix with something darker. Or if you feel that it's too warm, that could be possible, that I tasted that, just mix with something darker and colder. Both will work. So for that reason, you will see that later I'm going to mix with a different kind of gray with a bit of blue to create that mix. For sure, you can make mixes with the sponge too, to make that kind of touches to create noise on the rocks. So these kind of rocks are made from minerals, for water, during a lot of time. I don't know if they are stalactites or stalagmite, or at least in Spanish it's like that. So, and they made it with a lot of time, with minerals and water. Just dropping water. So at the beginning I thought that if I play with this kind of minerals with the sponge, will be faster and I'm going to offer something interesting. Then I'm going to try to represent the water going down with some lines with my brush. So more or less this is the effect that I would like to offer in that project. So this is what I tried to say. Create these kind of lines, like going down or falling down. Like trying to represent like water. And if you see, if you compare with the rocks looks warmer and more like flat, or like warmer than the other color, because it's just to compare between something cold and warm in the same place. I don't want to play with a lot of contrast. Then if I like it and if I feel that I need much more contrast, I'm going to add it, but not at the beginning. So at the beginning it's better play with something lighter, but not too much, because you will test if you like it or not. Then if it's okay, you can add another highlighting to represent exactly the same. And then if with the next one you feel that was too much, don't worry, because we have the airbrush. It's our favorite tool, right? So then we can bring down that light, or maybe change for another color, because now you have enough light to blend with filters over that. So more or less that's the result. And then use the reverse again to blend everything or to add some shadows. What kind of color you can use here? Black for sure. But if you add a bit of color inside, like a really dark green or blue, I think will look much better than just black. But if you see the result on the model, looks like pure black. That's the idea. Because we have to play without light. But if we play just with pure black, at the end will be a contrast between the model and the base too big. So we have to compare both sides, but always with something in both. So if you play with a lot of contrast on the base, it's okay. But remember, if you want to play with a lot of contrast on the base, means that you have to play with much more contrast on your model. Because if you play with the most powerful contrast on the base, you are trying to tell me that I have to check first the base than the model. And in that case, I would like to show just the top of the model at the beginning and then see the rest of the stuff. And then the base for sure. So the base for me should be desaturated and darker. Okay? And then just pull out the model with something that you have like that and remove the blue tag, just that, like this. I recommend you don't push or pull with too much stress. It's better make like circles to remove it than pull with your whole strength. And then to remove the blue tag, this is the key. Use blue tag to remove blue tag, like that. Because the old blue tag from your model will stick on the big ball with the blue tag. Then it's just test if fit your model on your base, and if doesn't fit, you have to do something that I'm going to explain you. Because I've painted my model outside from that base, and I've discovered that I see not very well how big was or is my model if I compare with my base. So if your model doesn't fit, it's time to use something like that to take out the excess. So don't worry about that base, because this is just to see perfectly where you have to put it together, how to glue the model in the perfect size, the perfect angle, everything. But this is just, it's like sand, so it's part of the ground, so don't care. So we will destroy that and then we will build up again. Something like that, really easy. I think you will enjoy breaking your model. So then you have to pin it for sure. I recommend you always, you have to pin it. Where in that case, if you see a skull on the base, I think it's the best place to pin it, because you will have, I think, thicker, deeper hole to pin it well. So if you see, I've drilled the base where is the skull. So we have pinned it, and then because I use cork, I'm going to just pin on the base and check if it's a perfect place or wrong. If it's wrong, move to another place. If it's perfect there, just take out, use cyanoacrylate and put it together everything. And this is how I work. So all my tricks are here. So this cyanoacrylate, it's from a big superstore. So it's not from miniatures, but this cyanoacrylate works perfectly. It's cheap and have accelerator to use in a pack. So I think you can find something like that, or if you have cyanoacrylate from a miniature company, works perfectly. So both works perfectly if it's cyanoacrylate. And I think with that kind of glue, you can assemble everything in our miniature wall, I think. Push, push down with enough strength, and then use accelerator this is something that I love it, because it's just push and use the spray and blow a bit, blow air, and I think in 2 seconds it's completely cured. So you don't have to stay the whole evening waiting to dry or to cure perfectly. And then once time is it's dried or cured, it's time to use this kind of products. Are really interesting to continue assemble or integrate everything in the base. So this is like a plastic patty that have color for sure, as you can see, and sand inside. So the result will look like sand, like part of the base that you made it. So I was painting or making the base with exactly the same product at the beginning. So the result about the size of this sand will be the same. So for that reason, I work like that. Why I do that? Because then I've pinning the miniature. Then I glue it with cyanoacrylate, and then I'm going to use that to continue sticking and integrating the miniature on my base. So I think it's really helpful for you, and I think your model will be stick forever there. Now, what do you have to do? Now we have to use the airbrush again to integrate the color. For that reason, I recommend you always use the wet palette to use forever when you are painting with your brush and when you are painting with your airbrush. Because, for example, you don't know if you have to use exactly the same mixes that you used on the base previously. And now I've discovered that I need it exactly the same. And I have them, all of them there. So I can use them. Maybe you can use them next day. For example, maybe it's depends where you live. It's depends of the weather, the humidity. If you use air conditioner, you will can keep wet or with enough conditions your acrylic painting on your wet palette, I think during 2 days, maybe not more. Sometimes you will see water inside of your mixes. This is for the humidity, and sometimes you will see something really dry, completely dry. It's depends of the humidity. There I can help you. So where I live in Madrid, in Spain, my painting still keep or enough with enough qualities to continue working on that 2 days. I usually use them, but not always. So if I have to do something with airbrush, maybe yes. If I have to do something with too many precision, I'm going to use new paint. But if I have to use something easy like base coat or something like that, maybe I can use it. It's depend. So as you see, it's really easy to integrate the model on your base. And this is how I work on the bases. This is, I think, really interesting, easy, and you have, I think, new tips to work on your bases. I'm going to increase the light in front of the model just to create the focus of the light there. But in that case, with something desaturated, with that kind of blue and cold. But you see, so it's a base, really minimalistic, with not too much stuff, really dark to move the attention on my model. And then this kind of paddles, as you see, it's like you see. So this is another product, really interesting to use. It's just like that, to make this kind of water effect, have inside the painting, so you don't have to do anything. Just move with your brush or with a tool that you want it, and just that. So I think the key to make the bases is just buy products, because the products will save your life. So if you don't have them, you will see, oh, this is awesome, and maybe it's just a product with maybe a snow product, or maybe to make grass or something like that. So I think the most difficult part on the video tutorials, or when you paint models, it's paint them. Then make the bases, it's just products. If you mix the products, will be, I think, successful, will be okay. For sure, you have to take sometimes making them. But the result, as you see, it's really nice. So now it's just take out the tape and our model is done. So I don't have nothing else to say. So this was everything. So I hope you have enjoyed watching this video tutorial, the huge process. So I know that your models will be awesome. So I hope you have learned a lot watching this one. Remember that you can add all that you learned from this model in other ones. You don't have to use exactly this one. And this is the result. So again, thank you very much for your huge support. It's a pleasure to share all my knowledge with you, and I hope surprise you with the next one. So see you in the next project. Bye bye.